Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at quality improvement. So hopefully you've got a strong understanding of what quality entails and what's involved in quality management. And now we're going to look at particular approaches and ways to improve quality within either our operation or within our organization more generally. So we have four distinct approaches for improving quality. Out of necessity and because of time constraints in this video, it's only going to be an introduction to each of these. If you want to examine them in more depth, you'll find lots of high quality information and more detail in the core text, as well as in the journal and academic literature more generally. So if we tackle BPR, or business process re-engineering, first, this is possibly the most radical of the ways we can approach quality improvement within an organization. So here we're actually looking to radically redesign our internal processes. So instead of being organized alongside functional areas such as marketing areas, HR, operations, logistics, design. Instead, they're designed alongside customer-focused processes. A really interesting example of this, if you want to see BPR in action, would be Ford Motors in the early 80s, where they examined their accounting department, which at the time was quite a large overstaffed department. They examined the processes involved, not just from a functional basis, i.e. examining not just what kind of processes the accounting department would require to fulfill their internal systems, but also from the perspective of the customer, and re-engineered their entire accounting process, purchase orders and accounts receivable, to radically reduce staffing, but also improve quality and reduce costs long term. So this is a way of not just finding efficiencies or shortcuts within an existing process, but really to rethink and re-understand what the process is aimed towards, what the process is delivering in terms of value to the customer, and then to find ways to re-engineer that process so you can hit the quality level required while minimizing costs. It does involve fairly large changes, so the idea of radical improvement is very much embedded within business process re-engineering. So if we move to our next approach, TQM, or total quality management, which is a very popular and very dominant paradigm within quality management over the last 60 or 70 years. So with this, we're focused on embedding quality within everything within an organization, and all levels of the organization, all staff members within the organization, all functional areas within the organization. So when we approach quality improvement, is done so with the understanding that there should be buy-in by all parts, all levels of staff, and we should really place quality and an understanding of quality at the heart of every activity that the organization carries out. TQM is a really interesting and vast kind of area with lots and lots of different types of implementation. There is another video specifically looking at TQM as well if you want to delve deeper into that. Our third approach is going to be lean operations. This is often called lean manufacturing as well. And this is a really distinct approach towards organizing our operations and improving quality that emphasizes minimization of waste rather than anything else. So we're looking to improve quality through examining our internal processes and aiming to pull items through our operation rather than have them pushed as is traditional, and to synchronize our supply with demand to really minimize any waste along the chain itself. It's quite a different way of organizing our operations as well as organizing our supply chain, but it does have demonstrable benefits for particular industries and particular operations. Our fourth and last general approach to quality improvement is Six Sigma. This has become very popular over the last 10 or 15 years. You may well have heard about it in other contexts, but Six Sigma is very focused on using data and information to develop a fact-based or evidence-based approach to improving quality processes and improving quality output, looking to minimize variance and to minimize acceptable deviation from expected output. So it is a fairly technical approach looking at very specific processes and using data and evidence to really drive decision making. So that gives us a brief overview of these four approaches, but we have to understand that there is a lot of overlap between them. They are broad approaches to quality improvement rather than specific methodologies with very set ways of doing things. So the best way to really try and express this would be a Venn diagram, a multiple overlapping Venn diagram. So we can assign distinct color codes to each of these four approaches and try and place them within a broader Venn diagram. So if we have two axes here, so one you can see from left to right, looking at the emphasis on solutions, so giving specific prescriptive instructions on what to do versus an emphasis on methods, so looking for how to carry out particular actions rather than exact actions to be carried out. On the axis running top to bottom here, we have an emphasis on rapid change, so a massive radical approach to change, which requires multiple different elements to be changed at the same time in order to produce quality improvements, versus emphasis on gradual change, where we can break down changes into smaller batches and look to change individual items, but still benefit from overall quality improvements. So if we go through and order our different approaches, so with business process reengineering, it can have an emphasis on what to do, but generally speaking, the key thing for BPR is rapid change. So if you're going to re-engineer your processes, what you can't really do is introduce it piecemeal. You really need to adopt an approach where you're making all the related changes at the same time, so it retains some kind of coherency and doesn't disrupt your actual output. So rapid change and radical change really is the hallmark of BPR. By contrast, we see with TQM there is an emphasis on gradual change, and as well as just gradual change, a real focus on methods of change. So it's a philosophy or an approach towards quality. It isn't a toolkit. There isn't specific things that you must do with TQM and which are not complementary with other methods. So we have a focus on reducing variation, but as well as this inclusion of all levels of the organization, a focus on continuous improvement. So that is to say, ongoing gradual change, improvement cycles. So there is not specific items which must be implemented. TQM implementations vary wildly depending on the industry and the context, as well as the approach of the company. But nonetheless, we can see that there is a distinct emphasis on general methods rather than on specific tools. Lean operations shares quite a lot with TQM. There is a significant amount of overlap here, but there is also a more precise focus on particular solutions. So we spoke about how lean approaches operations and supply chains from the perspective of pulling items through and trying to synchronize our supply with demand. So that leads to very particular types of solutions. So we're moving more towards emphasis on solutions rather than on emphasis on methods, despite a large amount of overlap in the way that lean operations and lean synchronization approaches quality in general. And lastly, we have Six Sigma, which would be on the other end of the scale. So again, lots of overlap with TQM here, but with a greater focus on evidence-based decisions and looking at engineering processes in order to reduce variance and to reduce defects. One thing that we can actually note with all four of these approaches towards quality improvement is that they're all involving various degrees a focus on process-based analysis. So looking at processes as the unit for quality improvement in particular. So for this, what we can do is just look at different ways we can focus in on process improvement in particular as part of a subset of broader quality improvement. So the first type of improvement process we can look at is often called breakthrough improvement, and it is commonly or closely associated with BPR in particular, but it's also a fairly traditional way of making any kinds of grouped improvements. So with breakthrough improvement, you have a lengthy planning period where you examine your existing process or processes, and then you group together a range of improvements, a range of changes to the process itself. The idea being that your process runs smoothly for a certain period of time. Then with the data that's been gathered, you'd implement a wide range of changes, and then that should improve the performance of your process. And then you'd examine it again for a long period of time, and then make another large batch of changes. The actual improvement patterns, the actual performance for this tends to vary over time far more than it would be planned, but this is a consequence of large batches of changes. So staff require training, they require a bedding in period. There's always going to be a drop in productivity, a drop in performance whenever you have a range of large changes. And also the other significant challenge with breakthrough improvements is that if the improvements are based on faulty data or faulty reasoning, then it becomes very difficult to roll back to the previous system because you have made a large batch of connected changes to the process as a whole. So there are significant drawbacks to breakthrough improvement. It is a bit of a gamble, a bit of a risk that there are actually going to hold. The changes will over time have a long-term positive benefit. So the alternative to breakthrough improvement is continuous improvement, which is closely associated with not just but particularly with TQM or total quality management. So here we have far smaller continuous changes being made all the time. So you're able to make a small change to your process, analyze the impact of that change, and then standardize and maintain the change and move on to the next small change. So we're not grouping lots of changes together in terms of a single breakthrough, but we're making continuous small changes. So improvement is seen as a process itself rather than something to achieve. It's not an end destination, but rather a continuous journey. We also have various different models to implement continuous improvement. PDCA is one of the more popular ones, and it's relatively straightforward, but involves 4 distinct changes for any process change. So you plan the change, and then you implement it on a small scale. So this can be in a trial run. So if you have 15 different production lines, you may choose to run a trial improvement on a single production run to see if it's effective, or it can be a time limited trial if you don't have multiple different areas to test on. Then you would check the impacts of that change itself. So has it been beneficial? Has it achieved the performance improvement that you were hoping for? And once you've confirmed that it is indeed beneficial, then you can act. So you can standardize and maintain. So then it becomes normal working procedure. It gets incorporated into the normal permanent cycle of operations. So through this model, you would work quite closely on each individual change, but because you're constantly changing, you're constantly improving, that should add up to significant performance improvements over time. We can see that there are fairly clear advantages and disadvantages to both. Breakthrough improvement, often known as innovation or a source of innovation, versus continuous process change, often referred to as Kaizen, a Japanese term which gained popularity. So we have short-term and dramatic large change versus long-term fairly quiet small changes. It does mean that there are a few things to note. The first, that breakthrough innovation is often moved forward through invention and theory. So BPR, an example of this, a reimagining of a process, which business re-engineering often entails, leading to scrapping existing processes and rebuilding them from the ground up to be engineered for a different purpose, driven by individual ideas and individual effort, often led by a single individual or a small group of people, versus Kaizen, which emphasizes a group effort, involvement from multiple different layers of staff, moving for consistent performance improvement through gradual steps. This means that breakthrough process change also does require a large investment of time and effort, particularly during the conceptual stage and the initial implementation, whereas Kaizen or continuous process improvement really is about the maintenance rather than just the initial effort in conceptualizing changes. We do also have a combination which is sometimes used, particularly where continuous improvement doesn't always make sense. So you would combine a focus on continuous improvements on individual changes, but there's also groups of changes which have to be batched together. So if you think something like the university, which is an operation like any other, is very difficult to have continuous improvement. You can actually see through some of the videos in this unit that there have been clear changes. So the background has changed, the formatting's changed, the way the videos have been broken up has changed, and all of this is based on feedback. So we can say that is continuous improvement, is small changes where we're able to see the feedback from students and then maintain those changes, or if the feedback is negative, to drop those changes. But it's impossible to make structural changes midway through the unit. We can't, for example, change the assessment type or change the assignment brief. So lots of larger changes still have to be grouped together and implemented as breakthrough process improvement. So with that, if you have the kind of operation where you can't always just use small continuous improvement, perhaps if we talk about manufacturing process types, we're dealing with things like batch production, where we simply can't do so, then we may well decide to have a combined approach where we have larger changes which have to be implemented together because they interact with each other, alongside smaller individual changes implemented through a PDCA or other Kaizen type process. Lastly, what we just want to look at are individual techniques that we can use, and these aren't going to be restricted to one type of quality improvement process or another. They can often be used across different contexts, and you will see these in other areas of business as well, but they are nonetheless useful tools to look into if they appear to be reasonable or interesting. So things like cause and effect diagrams, often also referred to as fishbone diagrams, help us identify the underlying cause of negative events or negative eventualities. We have why analysis, which is about as straightforward as it sounds, but remarkably effective, where we can simply ask the question why multiple times. So if you're undertaking why analysis when it comes to a late delivery, if you're a retail delivery company, well, why was the delivery late? Because it was packaged and sent out late. Why was it packaged and sent out late? Because we had a delay in this area. So you see, you keep asking why until you get to the underlying cause of the quality problems. And flowcharts we've seen again, so I'd refer to the process mapping video where we can see the usefulness of flowcharts and flow diagrams in actually identifying how the process actually works.